How has your message on this changed? Because obviously there's been a big evolution in the culture on this, and you don't have to talk about this if you don't want, but I know that there was a particular school that did a petition against you, not having you in.
Oh, yeah, that would be my alma mater.
Was it really? So what happened there?
Well, there's an all-girls school and an all-boys school right next to each other. And the all-girls school would bring me in every single year for Chastity Talk. Mm-hmm. The boys just wouldn't. And so some of the alumni or parents or whatever, they're like, you need to have Jason come too. So they're like, okay. So I came, gave a talk for the boys. They gave a standing ovation. It was great. And then I didn't hear from them for like 5 years after that. I'm like, that's kind of weird. The boys really seemed to enjoy it. And then again, they started to get pressure. You need to bring them back again. So they brought me back, and the talk went really well. And then after the assembly, the kids had a copy of the booklet Pure Manhood that we pass out. And it's got the imprimaturs, the church's teachings. And there's, a page on there on same-sex attractions. And a couple of the boys were just deeply offended. They're like, wait a minute, this teaches, this isn't what we're learning. Like this says that what we're doing is not in conformity with God's plan for human sexuality. And this is hate speech, and this is bigotry, and Jesus, Jason hates gays. And they started a petition. They put it on change.org for everybody condemned Jason's homophobia. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, and the stuff they put in the petition is not stuff I said or that I believe. And it just started this firestorm on the campus. They put it on change.org. All these people started, I didn't know Jason was a homophobe. And it was like, wow, so I went to the school and said, like, I don't believe that stuff. And, and it says your students and your faculty are behind this petition. And the principal kind of wanted to like, well, kids are going to do what kids are going to do. And thankfully the Bishop Thomas Olmsted,
good man,
was in support of me and had me come in, to do the men's conference there just to show, hey, I endorse what this guy teaches. And it was difficult, but it's kind of like a prophet's never welcome.
Totally.
His own place.
Yeah.
But
how have you seen Protestants do this message of chastity? Because I think it might be because they haven't been blessed by the wisdom of St. John Paul II, that when I tend to hear an evangelical speaker on this issue, it does tend to be more abstinence-based and less chastity. Why is that, and why is the chastity message more effective?
Well, I think the reason it is that is because, God bless our evangelical brothers and sisters, but they lack a theology of human sexuality. Like, what is it? And as a result, you might have guys like Dr. James Dobson saying that masturbation could be okay, because they don't, things like contraception. Because if you don't have a theology of sex, then, well, if masturbation could be okay and contraception could be okay, upon what grounds can you defend the other, misuses of God's gift of human sexuality? But that being said, there are so many great evangelical brothers and sisters that are promoting abstinence in the public school systems and trying to fight against the comprehensive sex ed curricula that are getting in there and making a mess. And so they're doing a lot of great stuff. But yeah, a lot of it is just abstinence, like, abstain, say no, here's your refusal skills, and giving them some relationship skills as well, but not the full-feathered virtue of chastity, which covers, your imagination, pornography, modesty, all of these other bigger issues. It's missing the full picture of that. This isn't something that ends in marriage. This is something that has to continue inside of marriage. And you could have a person that's technically abstinent, but far from chaste. Because they could be like, yeah, I'm abstaining from my girlfriend, but, I've got a horde of her pictures on my phone and we're still doing everything but, and that might be abstinence, but it's not chastity.
You heard of Joshua Harris, who recently sort of kind of distanced himself from the abstinence message that he once preached. I think I Kissed Dating Goodbye.
Yeah, and then Boy Meets Girl.
Yeah. And one of the things that's kind of come out of that is this idea, I don't know if you've heard of this, but this idea of the sexual prosperity gospel. So we know what the prosperity gospel is. If you follow Jesus, you'll be blessed with health and wealth. But some people talk about this idea of a sexual prosperity gospel, that if you just save sex till marriage, you'll have a great marriage. And even in the Catholic space, if you avoid contraception within marriage, you'll have a great sex life. Even in my own life, I'm getting emails and texts from guys who feel like they've been sold that, and they look at their marriage and it's brutally hard. NFP is very difficult. They're not having a great sex life. Some of them have perhaps broken up or something like that. So do you think that you have fallen into that? I'm not saying you have, but do you think you or other chastity speakers in the Catholic world have fallen into that? Or how have we avoided it? Or
well, let's look at both of them. One, the idea of before marriage, if you do all this thing right, everything will fall into place. and then the NFP idea after marriage. We'll take them separately. I mean, the data is clear that those who abstain from sex prior to marriage do have better sex lives in marriage. Study after study after study shows the exact same thing. The most sexually satisfied people in the world, you look at the research, and it's married people who go to church regularly, who entered marriage with little to no sexual baggage, report the highest level of sexual satisfaction. So statistically, yeah, there is something that's not simply correlation, but causation. There's actual very clear trend here. That having been said, a lot of people think, okay, well, I just do XYZ, and then I'm going to get my reward at the end. And I've read blogs from extremely disgruntled women who said, look, I did it all, and it's been a nightmare. And he and I were not sexually compatible at all. And they share, like, I was kind of raised with a very puritanical idea, like it's bad, good. And
That's
so
right.
they were almost taught all the way up. It's dirty, it's gross, it's unholy, it's
it?
evil.
Yeah.
Now it's yours.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute, how do I go from like this is the devil's tool to like, oh, this is the theology of the body? Like, and it's because, you know, they may have been taught, well, that's a dirty body part. Well, like, there are no dirty body parts. So they were taught
Unless you've been rolling in mud.
then you got a dirty body part. Yeah, but how do you shift from reverse into the fifth gear like that without something falling out of the engine? And that's what happens is they did not have, in my opinion, an integration of the sexual desire, of realizing, okay, I have sexual attractions. That doesn't make me an evil person. That doesn't make my body bad or her body bad. But what do I do with these desires? What do I do with these impulses? And, you know, training them in that and realizing, hey, these are good things. And human sexuality is a beautiful gift. And when that language is missing and it's like, no, that's bad, that's dirty, that's evil, how do you switch gears? And I think that creates a lot of sexual dysfunction. And then also, and this is something I'm starting to harp on more with the college students, is a lot, and I know I haven't gone to Franciscan University of Steubenville, awesome campus, you know, great college,
Yeah, I
but
agree.
I was punched in the gut when I started to see how many divorces were happening of my classmates 3 months into marriage or just 3 years into marriage, and then it implodes, and it was just like, oh, them? No way. You know, they were praying the rosary and doing daily mass, and now they're divorced. Oh, I can't believe it. And now, you know, trying to think like, what was the root of this? And something that's come to me is sometimes we over-spiritualize marriage, meaning she's got a brown scapular, I have a brown scapular. You know, I did a novena Therese, and then I saw plants in front of my house that had a rose, and so I know she's the one. And
So true.
And what ends up happening is sometimes we use novenas as a replacement for discernment because we're impatient. Well, I want an answer within 9 days, and I want a yes or no, so I'm going to bust out this novena, and I'm going to look for flowers all over the place. And then I'm going to, and a lot of times we think because we are in agreement in all things religious, that therefore we will have a harmonious marriage. But you're overlooking a lot of human elements that seriously need attention. Like, is there respect? Can we argue lovingly? Do we know how to reconcile? Are we in agreement on finances? Like, there's so many issues that aren't spiritual that just because you can check all the dots on doctrinal agreement with your potential future spouse, it doesn't mean that it's going to be a harmonious marriage. And so that's why we need to make sure we're not discerning in isolation, going Lone Ranger. You know, we need to do this with the influence of the family, accountability, spiritual director, marriage prep, all that. Because when it's just her and I and God against the world, you can have a very blurry image of reality. Because
Looking back, I see that one of the great signs that I was going to have a beautiful, good wife, at least. I won't say a great marriage because I'm part of it and I could bottom out at any point. But one of the reasons that I knew she was a winner was all my family and friends were like, she's incredible. Yeah. Now, I'm not sure if that's why I married her. They could have said she's horrible and I would have went, you're horrible, and then married her. But looking back, I see like people were like, oh my gosh, Cameron is incredible, you know?
Yeah.
So that idea of not discerning in isolation.
Yeah, I sometimes think of like if you put a book 3 inches from your face, you can't read the text. And so it's the same thing in human relationships, emotionally, sexually, physically, spiritually. When we get so close, we can't read it. We just can't. Let's just be honest. But the people that are several feet away, they can see it so much more clearly. And so we want to make sure we're tapping into their wisdom instead of just discerning in isolation. And so to me, all those factors play a role of like, imagine I'm getting towards marriage and I'm a very spiritual relationship with this person. I've crossed all the T's and dotted the I's. I've obeyed myself and stayed away from dirty sex. And then now we're going to get married and it's going to be holy and everything's perfect. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way, and it's sad, but the problem isn't chastity. That's what's going on now is people think, oh, well, chastity's the problem. Abstinence message is the problem. If only you weren't teaching that, then this would not have happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the problem is, it's not that the teaching was wrong, but perhaps the method in which it was taught was problematic and deficient. So they might have been being taught this sexual prosperity gospel instead of the truth and meaning of human sexuality.
I'm thinking of an analogy here, like to finances. If someone says, like, you've got to be responsible with your money, and here's how you do it. You're going to put all your money in this, and it bottoms out. Well, the problem isn't advice on money.
Or investment.
Investment,
Yeah. So to me, I think that's the fault that people could fall into, is thinking, see, that's the problem. Chastity's the problem.
Hey, if you enjoyed that clip, you will absolutely love the full interview, so click right there to enjoy the whole thing. Also, a big thanks to these groups who made that interview possible. Learn more in the show notes below about these guys. They're absolutely incredible, and honored to have them as sponsors. Oh, and also, if you haven't subscribed yet, click subscribe and then that bell button. That way YouTube will be forced to let you know when we put out more content.